Well, welcome everyone to workshop session 12B, Individualized Parenting, the importance of learning to parent the children you have been given to raise. In this workshop, we will hear from Barbara Robertson. Barbara is an Ohio-born New York adoptee who received a copy of her original birth certificate after new Ohio legislation took effect in March 2015. Since then, she has been able to discover her biological origins and establish contact with both sides of her family. But before we begin, I want to introduce myself. I am John Kirkman. I am a family support specialist and an adoptive parent at AFFCNY, working toward post-adoption support. And I will be your moderator for Zoom today. I want to also remind everyone that training certificates are available for this conference. You must have your Zoom name listed as the same name you'd like to appear on your certificate. I will put the link for requests in the chat box. I will put two other links guiding you to our book table fundraiser and the conference workshop evaluations. Please know, if you have any questions during this workshop, please feel free to put them in the chat unless the presenter specifically asks for anyone to unmute themselves. I will keep everyone muted for now so we can all hear the speaker clearly. Additionally, we are encouraging all workshop presenters to add any handouts, slides, and notes, etc., into their specific event within the AFFCNY network so that the conversations can continue. And with that, let's get started.
So, first of all, thank you everybody for joining us for this particular workshop. I'm very honored to present this today. And especially because we've had so much good material that has been coming forth with all the other workshops. It has been very, very, like, the meat of it has been fantastic. And I think that you guys can agree with that. So to start this off, I just wanted to do a little housekeeping in that I wanted to create this as a safe space, a comfortable space, a relaxing space, if you will. This is not, I am an adoptee, so I'm going to say right off the bat that this is my point of view, or one can say perhaps I'm biased because I'm an adoptee. And so I apologize for that if that could cause some concern. However, I want to reassure you that I am empathetic to the entire constellation. And sometimes with that point of view, we sometimes can get a little pigeonholed to what we're seeing and what we're experiencing from our point of view. So therefore, we don't see what's going on with the others. And with that being said, I want to acknowledge this complicated space called parenting when you're in this adoption space. So a little bit about me, besides what John shared, that besides being adopted at birth with the direct placement and the closed records and nobody talking about adoption. Yeah, so then I grew up to do something that I never thought I would do, and that is to become a social worker and work in child care and adoption. So I did that for 2 years. I learned so much from the kids and their families. And at the same time, it was a time I was being reunited and connected to my own biological origins because it happened to coincide with the change of the legislation. And after that, I attended my first adoptee conference, and I was able to become then part of the community, if you will, of adoption, of the triad, as it used to be formally called. So I became a moderator for several Facebook groups focused on adoption, adoptive parents. I became a co-facilitator for the monthly adoption group, Constellation, because everybody's invited to come through Adoption Network Cleveland. We hold these every month. And I am most lately a board member of the National Association for Adoptees and Parents, which is nearly formed after or out of the Indiana Adoptee Network. So first, what I wanted to do was talk about some misconceptions, and I probably will kind of move this stuff. I apologize that can you guys see it completely or just partially?
We can see the full. Yeah, completely.
Good. Okay. Let me go back and put it where I can. Okay, so misconceptions. I put a couple of examples, for example, in this. What are the misconceptions that one would have in terms of parenting in the adoption space? The one that is really popular, love will be enough, and we're savior to these kids. So some things are commonly said or discussed. I want to know if there's other examples that people have of other things that they've heard in the community. And John, what would be helpful for me is if you could, since I can't see all of everyone, if there's any raised hands, if you could do that. And I'm also going to see if I can look at the chat. Yeah, adoption is all happy. Yes, the unicorns and rainbows thing. Celine, thank you. You're such a blessing to these kids. Thank you, Erica and Ven, for saying that. Tired of being told that I'm a saint. Kids are lucky. Joy versus loss, as if there's just a one or the other type of emotion to feel at one time. So thank you for sharing those. So the thing is, when you're tired of hearing those things, it can weigh on you as well. Just the responsibility of that, of one, learning about what it's like when it's not what you thought, and also what other people expect and what they say to you and to the children that you're raising. A lot of times when people are sharing those type of ideas and feelings, it minimizes the child that's involved, or the child or the children. And what I would like to see through this is that there are issues. There's no question about that can happen. However, I would like to say, if we're going to be able to raise responsible adults, which is the goal, raise responsible adults, then we have to focus on what would be best for the child or children that come into the space. So what are some of the influences about what we feel? And that is the things that parents do when they're trying to parent children. And whether the good intentions are there, but we are also human beings. And I'm counting myself because I'm also a parent, but we're also, because there's some things that are parental that is in general. It happens whether you're a parent, no matter how you become a parent. So with that being said, sometimes it's very difficult. Like it's hard to deal with. Some of you have already mentioned a couple of things just by hearing people say things to you. So you might want to be able to protect yourself from some of the pain of parenting, coping mechanisms, if you will, that go along with that. So an example of that is to, like, for example, you're guarded or emotionally unavailable. Any other type of self-protection measures that you've taken as a parent?
I know that in my family, we've attempted at times to increase how much control we can have, and to very little benefit. But it just seems to be an instinctive backup plan. It's like plan A and plan C when plan B doesn't work.
Yeah, that's a good point. That a lot of times when our environment is uncertain or unpredictable, we reach out to try to control as much as possible. And like you said, it is very instinctual. Especially when we think about fight, flight, freeze and fawning, that's a flight type of reaction. So thank you for saying that, John. That really is accurate. Deflecting, absolutely. Thanks, Renee. Deflecting. No, this isn't a big, this is nothing. Oh no, you're fine. You're all right. Things
Well,
are all right.
I like the other comment there, withdrawing from friends and family,
Yes,
because they're
Becoming
living in a
isolated.
different reality.
absolutely. Absolutely.
That really, all that really brings us back to the dangers of all the mythology and all those misconceptions and all the things that we go into it as parents. It helps to keep us in a fog of our own, where for a very long time we're so convinced that we're going to be able to figure it out and fix it. And all of those platitudes and all that kind of stuff really gives us space to hide. So yeah.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And for the most part, don't you feel that people, adults in particular, can get away with those type of coping mechanisms or the maladaptive type of behaviors more than the kids would?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, it's listed some, and you guys have mentioned them. Projection, another thing, like, no, it's not, I'm not the problem, you're the problem, or yeah, no, that's your issue, that's not mine, and those kind of things. But then I put the word vulnerable here because vulnerable is one of the reasons why we do what we do in terms of coping mechanisms, because we feel vulnerable. We're trying to protect ourselves. And as parents, as adults, we're protecting ourselves, and we're trying to be in this authority mode that we've got it all together for our kids. However, vulnerability is not necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
And so, but there are ways in which we can be vulnerable. And that's where we can start talking about that. So one of the first things, awareness, right? Awareness is the first step for us in terms of what's going on here, and be really truthful about it. That's another thing. The truth, the good, the bad, and the ugly of life it's not always pretty, it doesn't feel good, it's uncomfortable, all of that. And as human beings, the tendency is to escape those emotions, those feelings. However, I want to say that it's okay to be comfortable with the uncomfortable, because there is where the honesty can lie in what happens, what is happening in your life. And being able to be honest about what's happening can help you get closer to the solution of what can work for your family. And that's the other thing too. Everybody is not going to do the same thing or that they should do the same thing to expect the same results, because your families are unique. How they became families are unique. Personalities, there's many factors. And that is why to be curious is also like a door, a key that unlocks the door. Be curious about you, especially your child and the children that you're given to raise. Because curiosity allows you to feel open to asking questions of them. It's also giving you the ability to hone in on them and let them talk back to you. Be empathetic to what you're hearing. Sometimes kids can be our best teachers. And that's one of the things I learned when I was working in adoption foster care, is that even if they are nonverbal, they can teach you a lot of things. And that's where you can spend time in their world because, and I don't know about you guys, but I'm going to make a confession. One of the ways that I can get a chance to cope with things is to get into a child world. And this is a good excuse. Like, for example, going to a movie, you know, where it's a Disney movie that if you didn't have kids, you never would go to. So, but you could do that and see how they are and respond. Give them the opportunity to just be kids. They don't have to do anything. They just can be and take delight in that. Take delight in the fact of who they are. Even the most challenging of situations you can have with your child, you do have some things that can be good about that child that you can see. And then you could also you could celebrate them.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things that I loved, let's see, it was Dr. Shango had said in his workshop, you know, I love that he said, when you know, the child, like when there was two people in his life, in his father's life, one was seeking to destroy him, but then the other one was encouraging him. It's like, what a difference it makes if someone just takes the time to just be encouraging and just be with that child just for a few moments. It can make a difference. Just acknowledge who they are. But the thing is to remember, you can't solve all their problems. It's okay that you cannot. Now, this is the thing, parenting, we do love our children. If we really love our children, we want them to have the most perfect life possible, with everything being the rainbows and unicorns. But life is really not like that. So what do we do then? That's where we're aware of that, is we can help them to get through those things that are very difficult, that may not be so wonderful for them. So that means that we can advocate for them. We can be able to just develop to strengthen them to get through those things that are challenging. So I think I basically skipped around a little bit, but that's okay because I wanted to also encourage there to be some interaction here. I didn't want to be the only one talking because I honestly, we're not experts. All of us are not like the complete experts, know all, do all, be all in terms of being an adult and being in the position of taking care of children. We just aren't. And where, yes, you're human. That means humans are not perfect. And once you give yourself grace, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that's great. Got a little message there. So once you know that you can breathe and give yourself the grace in yourself, then that also allows you to give the child grace as well. Because then you can know that, no, they're not perfect either. And also you can help them to be comfortable with that, because a lot of times the kids are going to want to please their parents, and they are going to know, whether you even speak it out loud or not, whether they're disappointing to you or whether you have some kind of feelings about them. They're going to know. So it's okay to just, again, recognize and acknowledge truth and allow your child to as well, and to come alongside with them, help them work it out, and also help yourself as well.
Barbara, can I interrupt and ask you a question right now?
Yes.
We hear a lot of talk about grace. I'd really like to hear what are some examples of giving grace? What does that look like from day to day, giving grace to our children and ourselves?
Okay, well, for example, when we don't have we have a bad day, for example, right? We come home from work, we're tired, we really just want to go to sleep or whatever. And then, your children also need you because maybe they needed to ask you a question or they wanted to just show you something or whatever. And in those moments is where it's most challenging to be your best self. Mm. And so the thing is, creating in that is just you creating a moment where, and you got to do this in advance. I'm going to tell you that, because when you're in the moment, you're not going to remember because your brain goes offline. When you're in that flight, it's going to go offline. So if you know that in advance, you're going to say to yourself or just kind of plan, okay, I know when I come home from work, I'm just going to be really exhausted. I'm not going to feel like talking to my kids. So I'm going to let them know that we're going to take 10, 15 minutes or, however age appropriate, you're going to let them know that there's going to be a little time that you're going to remove yourself, do what you need to do to relax and then come back to them. Because ultimately in the grace, you're saying, hey, I'm not at my perfect self, but then that doesn't mean I don't love you or that I'm not going to give attention to you. So you're going to reassure the child that you're not going to go away. You're going to come back, but this is what we need to do right now. And then follow through on honoring your word to your child about coming back to them and spending that time and giving them that focused time. Mm-hmm. So I probably are answering more than one question, but please give me feedback if
that sounds good. And that's kind of what I was thinking about, because what it makes me think about the whole list that you have here, the curious, empathetic, and you mentioned vulnerable before. I mean, that's really all part of that, isn't it? I mean, being able to tell your child in a moment, especially in a moment when you're feeling out of control, that mommy, daddy needs to take a minute for myself to come back, and then we can address this again. It's almost like that whole list of being curious and empathetic and spending time with your child is all about you as a parent giving yourself the grace to just be human, and you're showing that modeling that for your child in a way that really kind of almost goes beyond your words, because what you're doing is trying to connect in a way with the child.
Yes, ding, ding, ding. You hit the nail on the head, that these are absolutely things to help you to be vulnerable, to be human in front of your kids, and also model that, because they're not going to have good days either. But what was the point? Like, why are we being parents? And that's something I skipped before, right? I'll come back to that. Like, why did you become a parent? I mean, in the first place. So you want to raise, hopefully, good, responsible adults. So that starts now as their children. It doesn't start when they're 18. It starts now. And yeah, they're going to act like kids, but then they have to have the opportunity to act like kids, because that's how they learn. And so if they see you, the already adult, modeling behaviors that they can emulate, then it will only help them to be able to be better at the skills that you're trying to instill in them. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'll pause here. And if there's anyone else that'd like to come in and comment on what we're saying right now.
When I think of giving grace, I also think about, like, after I've made a mistake, not beating myself up about it, but going, okay, I'm human. I can go back. I can do a repair. But, and then doing the same for your kids, that everybody makes mistakes, and that there's some grace in saying like, all right, that was not my best moment. I'm not going to stay in that space. I'm going to give myself grace, forgive myself, and sort of move on. And then being able to do the same thing when our kids mess up.
Yeah, thank you for that, Emily. Because if I remember when I was a child, children tend to, whether they do, because it's another part of their development, that if there's anything going on in the house, they ultimately will blame themselves. They'll blame themselves for whatever's going on with you, because kids, the magical thinking that everything they do affects everything around them. So inadvertently, that may be something that they are taking on and you don't know that. So having the opportunity, like if you did a mistake, that's again a good model for them, because you're telling them, you know what, people do make mistakes, I'm sorry. And then saying I'm sorry to them will help them to know that way, and then explain like, okay, I'm sorry that blah, 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 that helps them to put things in perspective too, right? Like, this is not you. This is not you, not your fault. That kind of thing. And that's another thing as well about children, where taking on the responsibility of everything, that's the secret life of children, if you will. So there's going to be things that is happening in your child's head and psyche that you may not get to know. And that has to be okay too in some ways. I know it's difficult because, for example, as an adoptee, I never talked about adoption to my parents, never, because okay, I'll admit, when I became a teenager, that's when I ask my first question, and I didn't get a good response, to be honest. It wasn't positive. So what did it do? It shut me down, and it made me never ask again. So the information that I found out subsequently as an adult was the stuff that I found out on my own. So it was that secret, the things that I had in my head about the circumstances, and feeling sad, wanting to know about my biological family, wanting to, and not being able to talk about it, was very difficult. And so going back to the word vulnerable is about being able to hear things that may be uncomfortable. Like, for example, it has nothing to do with you if they want to search. I mean, everybody that's a human being may have curiosity about their origins. They want to know where they came from. And a lot of it has more to do with identity development, like who did I come from, so that I can emulate those traits, those things. So that's another thing where it can lead to what I call the both and. It's okay to have both things, other contradictory things going on in your life at the same time, particularly emotions. And Emily says, that's the problem with wanting to talk about adoption until the kid brings it up. You don't always know what's happening in their head. That's absolutely true. And best case scenario is to allow them the opportunity to have a space, a safe place to do that. A place that's not unconditional, that is loving and consistent, that will help them to be able to process those things. If they know that they're not going to hurt you or that you're not going to go away, then it allows them to be free to share things with you that they might not have wanted to. And this is where one as parents can come in and be an ally. And that's if the, follow the child's lead, because maybe there's some things they just wanted to talk to you about, but then they didn't want to necessarily have you do something about it. So that's also part of this. Now, all this to say that, sometimes you're going to do certain things, and this is the right step to take. However, in another situation, it may not be the same, especially if you're parenting multiple children. What works for one may not work for the other. And that's where it's okay to try something different. It's okay to not treat them the same. Because there's many factors that go into that. It's about what we do, like we reframe. Okay, I can talk about it at this point. It's about reframing what we've learned, and also retraining what we've learned. I think that society has created us to be thinking in black and white terms, when true life is actually more complicated, more gray. So this is where the part of it that I want to emphasize about that it's okay for things to not be okay sometimes. And one's best hope is that you as parents on this side will have resources such as, whatever the resources can be to help you to process what that, the pain, the feelings that you're having. So up at the top of the summary, I say, feel your feelings, because it's absolutely true. You should feel your feelings. But if they're complicated, if you need some additional help with that, it's okay to reach out, and support groups, counseling, friends that that you can talk to, people other than the child, because you do need to process some things away from them so that you can come back and then be your best parental self with them. And it also can help with the rest of the things, being comfortable with the uncomfortable, and being comfortable with that both and instead of either or. And also part of creating your nurturing home and developing the resiliency that the adults need, those children need, in order to be responsible citizens of the world. And to remember that things are not always going to stay the same. They can change. So, especially when it comes to children too. What you may be dealing with now is not necessarily what's going to be always what you're dealing with. So please remain and maintain the hope. This is my favorite thing when that comes out of foster care training, but Q-tip. And quit taking it personally. I like to emphasize that, just so that you can separate yourself from behavior of children as communication. So if you look at it that way and not take it personally, then you're able to then open yourself up to be curious and to see, wait a minute, like a detective, what is going on? What's really going on? Let's see how what can help me to unpack that? What do I need to learn to unpack that? And that's another thing too, of being open to learning things that you don't know. There's a question, what are some things you wish your parents would have said to you that would have helped you in processing your adoption and identity? Well, the first one is that I would have wanted them to say that it was okay to talk about it, and to not, I felt that I was penalized because I wasn't the same. There were comments that were made to highlight that. And instead of it made me feel even more different than I already felt about myself. And it would have been nice for them to be able to just be vulnerable and say, hey, look, this is not your fault. This has nothing to do with you, because they were going through some things, and I know that. If they would have just said that, if they would have left me just be the kid out of the situation and then said, these are some adult things, then I would have felt a lot better. Did that answer your question?
Yes, yeah, I sometimes I wonder, do I talk too much about adoption? Do I not talk enough about it? Sometimes it's really hard for me to know what my kids want to hear from me. Not having had that experience, it's hard for me to know sometimes what they need to hear from me. Do they want me to talk about adoption? Do they not? Do they, want help finding their birth parents or connecting more? Do they want me to stay out of it?
And that's good. Thank you for asking those questions. It's going, you have to let them take the lead on it, because it could change. Like right now, how old are your children?
They're teenagers ranging from 13 to 20, well, 21 almost.
Yeah. So right now, one of the things to consider, parents, is their age. When they're younger, oh, sorry, go ahead, Sandy, take it away.
Oh, thank you. It's an interesting question, and I wish my own adopted mother had thought of it, so kudos. As a teenager, I knew the right answer to ask if my mother asked me about, do you want to see your family? Do you want to know information? By the time I was a teenager, I believed that the correct answer was no, of course not. So I think you have to take a look back at how you've been about their adoption all this time. Your own curiosity throughout the years will give them permission to be curious. What I would say, personally, I wish I had heard, was my mother saying, I wish I knew more about your background. I wish I knew more about your family. And if you ever feel the same way, wouldn't it be nice if we could go on that journey together? But I wouldn't want to hear about it constantly. Now that's me personally. I don't know if it's helpful, but it was the first thing that popped in my head when you asked the question.
Yeah, thanks, Sandy, for that, because it is, you're right. I was going to start off by saying that developmentally, like the younger the children were, it's like you're going to talk about all of this in a matter-of-fact way according to their age. So if it's better to start when they're younger, to just say, look, it's just a moment, like, okay, you were adopted, or someone, this is the situation, real brief. You don't even have to go into it. But it's going to just form in their heads, one, this is part of our family. This is how I came to this family. And it's okay because, my mom and dad, my mom talked about it, and they said it. And then for teenagers, like you said, Sandy, I mean, sometimes they're going to want to hear, and they want your help. And then sometimes they may not, and it might change. It's going to change from year to year or decade to decade about the level of involvement. And one thing, to not put too much pressure on yourself to talk about it all the time, because then that also becomes, oh no, they're talking about this whole thing again. And then you got another issue to deal with, right? Because now they're being resistant. It's like you just have to let your kids take the lead and be able to be empathetic enough to kind of know whether you should pull back or not. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing is that I need to be making opportunities to have that conversation, referencing it, but not going hard and heavy about it, so that if they are interested in talking about it, they know that I'm okay talking about it.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So, gonna stop. There we go. Now I'm going to see your faces. Sort of. I want to thank you guys for giving me grace and bearing with me, because my technology was not as smooth as it was when I was working with it before I came on. So
we're all so used to that by now, Barb, because, you know, that's just the way life goes these days for everyone. It's 2 years in. Everyone knows how that's going to happen.
It does. No matter what we prep, we always say, and we always have that thing, things get wonky.
yeah, this
It's
is a
wonky.
wonky thing.
It's just a
Absolutely.
wonky thing. Sometimes it's just wonky.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, is Sandy, does Sandy have something that you'd like to say?
Hi, Sandy.
No, I'm good. I actually said what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Yeah, this is definitely opening up to, you know, comments and questions.
I was wondering about the, wait, there's something happening down there. Miss Lyra has something. Oh, no. Oh, she's just making a comment.
Thank you.
I was wondering about, because we talk about, you know, letting the kids lead us in how we discuss these things and how we talk about these things. And sometimes intellectually we get it, you know, but emotionally we all have feelings as adults, as people, and in our experiences, we feel a certain kind of way about everything, right? And I think the danger is that part of it gets transmitted a lot early, before we were even in that, you know, where we're thinking about it stage. And I think that's where the problem is laid, because I think Sandy was saying that she knew what the answer was, and really what that means is she knew how her parents felt about it, so she knew what her answer, the right answer should be, you know. And that gets transmitted sometimes before we even talk about it, you know. It's the look in the eyes, and I guess the question for me was, is there a way for us to get better, or to get to send the right message early? You know, I mean, in terms of having some self-reflection, so that before this conversation even comes up, you know, we were kind of transmitting, you know, I don't know. It's kind of like, I don't know if is it the egg or the chicken or whatever, what came first kind of thing, but I don't know. I see there's a hand there. Maybe Jillian, you want to come in and add to that?
That's a good point. Before Jillian, yeah, I love the chicken and egg reference here. You know why? Because the one would think that the what comes before is before you parent.
Yeah.
You know, it's what you've got to examine, even if you didn't. I mean, even if this was it happened so fast, you didn't even have time to think. But you do need to examine that. Like, what's the motivation? You know, what's the why of the fact that you've stepped into this role for you? Because it's going to be different. Like it may be, you may start off with, okay, this is the reason, then it may change, but at the end of the day, that's where self-reflection is very important. And you may have to do and you may have to do this a lot. And it may be intense to do it. And I want to encourage you to know that listen, there's no right way or a length of time that you process, and then you're, you know, it's bad if you go beyond X amount of time. No, it's not. It's a constant process. Yep. And that's where you also when you're self-reflecting, are you getting to know yourself? And if it's going to take you, say you go through, example, the workshop, you take one of these classes, right? You know, maybe it's an hour and a half, 2 hours and stuff like that, but it's some material that came through and you think, man, I should be able to get through this. Yeah, I got this, you know, and then you find yourself maybe reflecting on it way more. That doesn't mean something's wrong with you because you didn't get it all and consume it all in that moment. It's just that is you, that's your process. And so that's where you do have to examine yourself a lot, and for many different reasons. So Jillian, you said Jillian had a comment?
I see there's a hand up there. Nope, that's just
No
my
hands? Yeah,
I'm sorry.
it's okay.
Barbara, as you're talking, I keep thinking about this idea of expectations, right? What did we expect parenthood to be like? How did we expect our children to act or to be? And what happens when reality winds up very different from those expectations, which was certainly my experience becoming a parent. I had an idea in my head that wound up looking very different than reality looked. And, you know, so coping with, I mean, I think, you know, for me, there was, I almost feel guilty saying it, but I think some sense of disappointment and loss on my part that parenthood was not feeling the way I wanted it to, that I had to deal with so that I could move into what parenting was actually looking like and what my kid was actually needing. But I think those, you know, it's being honest about what our expectations are and then how we cope with it when those expectations are not reality.
Yes, you're so right. And thanks for bringing up loss and grief, because there is that. I mean, not only for your children, but also for yourself. And it could be from different sources at different times in terms of that loss and grief. One, for example, of the expectations that one has for how we parent or how we want to parent, and then the reality is it's hitting us in the face like, okay, that didn't go the way I wanted it. And so there is the opportunity for you to do that it's necessary, in fact, to go through the grieving process, to go through the emotions of things not going quite right. And it doesn't, again, mean that life has, you know, it's just completely a disaster and, you know, that all is lost. It just means that it's going to be a little bit more challenging to go through the steps to getting that child to adulthood with your own personality intact. Yeah, and expectations change over time. Yep, years build on losses. Grieving continues over new situations. Yeah. I'll give you an example. You know, with my kids, because we had to deal with an ill parent. So the grief that I experienced was, man, I wish that my kids didn't have to experience that, the sickness, the illness of their other parents, because that means they don't have a full experience of having that parent. And it was at the same time trying to deal with my own grief and also trying to deal with the grief of my, you know, my significant other. Like, it was very difficult. However, my children are grown now, and thankfully, so it's like, okay, at least they got to adulthood. And they seem to be okay because, you know, they're actually doing some responsible things. But do I wish that they could have had better? Do I wish that, you know, things could have been better for them because I love them so much? I feel like they should have the entire universe. Yes. How about you guys?
I'm comfortable in the fact that I think I've been a good enough dad. I've been a good enough dad for my children. And I'm very comfortable with that.
Good enough. That's a great phrase. Yes. A good enough. Yeah. Good enough is fine.
I'm glad.
You know?
I always revert back to Sally Field. They like me.
They like me.
Yes.
They really like
They
me.
Really like
Really
me.
do.
They're adults and they haven't left and they still talk to me and hang out with me. They like me.
Yeah.
I'm good
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah, exactly. And I must say, sadly, that there are times when, unfortunately, that may not be the outcome. So I am, first of all, giving you a virtual hug if there are people that had experienced that. But again, sometimes it's about loving from afar.
Mm.
Sometimes it's about, oh, go ahead, Chester, are you going to say something?
No, that was someone else.
I was going to say that loving from afar, one of the hardest things I deal with is my loss of faith. And I don't mean necessarily a religious faith. I mean the faith that my parenting now is working. Because my expectation, as we're often told, that it'll pay off in 2 years or 5 years, but whenever adulthood arrives. But it sure doesn't look like it's working right now. And my faith fails. And I'm like, looking from afar, you know what? It gets foggy. I can't see down the road and I can't tell. And I lose my way. And I'm like, what was supposed to work? Because it's all in here. I can't, the feedback that, yeah, Dad, it's working. You know, they're not telling me that. That's not what they're telling me. And I got to go find a way to renew that faith.
Yeah.
Give myself some rest, one, but to come back and
John, I'm so glad that you said that. I relate to that statement so much. I had, you know, my support person through You Gotta Believe. I'll give a shout out to You Gotta Believe. I actually work there now. They were good enough to me that that I wanted to stick with them even after my son grew up. But yeah, my support person used to tell me all the time, "You're making a difference. You're making a difference." And I was like, she does not know what she's talking about. No, I'm not. And I think my son came to me when he was 16. He was probably 27 before I saw that, oh yeah, there something did actually happen. He is doing better because of the time that he spent with me than he might have been doing otherwise. And he will say, I'm doing better because of the time I spent with you. But it took a really long time to get there. And I had very little faith at many, many, many points in the road. It's really, really hard sometimes.
It is. And thank you for saying that, Emily and John, because let me tell you, I did the exit interview. Okay, I tried, I literally did that. When they were going off to college, I'm like, okay, so do you feel like I loved you enough? Like, do you feel like you were supported? Like, I actually asked those questions because it was so important to me to make sure that my kids got what unfortunately I didn't get. And that's something that I look forward to talking about one day, but parenting as an adoptee. And if you, or just even parenting and you had a trauma history, like that is something that you know, if you really are, you think about it, maybe even more so. And that's on top of regular parenting. So John, yeah. And you know what they said, of course, with the shrug, like, well, yeah, sure. Yeah, everything's fine, you know? And they're not going to go ahead and give you the whole treatise, except they could write a book about you. And I just say that, you know, guys, just prepare yourself for that. But no, I'm also saying that you're not, the payoff of that is it might not come for years. But you know, you can celebrate the small wins about maybe they were a little bit farther along in something that they had a challenge with than they were prior. And you still have time, John, in whatever way, to still be course correct, if you will, to course correct. Because if you're open to learning and growing because you're still alive, then everybody's going to benefit from that.
Can I add in? I actually just raised my hand, but we can ignore it. I was resonating with what you said about being a parent and wondering how well you did, and then adding on being an adoptee who's a parent. And I think that what I wish my adopted mother knew, and she had been orphaned as a child and gone through some horrible trauma of her own and was actually denied the chance to adopt. So she got me illegally. So there are all sorts of little levels to this. I wish I didn't feel like I had to make her look like a good enough mother. And somehow I knew that as a child. And then when it was time and I became a very young mother, I was barely 18. I didn't know who to model myself after. All I knew is somehow I wanted the good from her, but not the ugly. And I didn't know what that meant. And as a result of that, I made plenty of mistakes, because we all do as parents. And, she was there for my children, which was wonderful. But now I'm very close to my two sons, and my daughter, my firstborn, is gone, basically gone. I mean, I still see her, but she's very distant. So what I want to say is it doesn't matter in some respect if you're the adopted parent or you're biologically the parent. Some children just need to run. and some come back and some don't. I actually had a therapist who asked me if my daughter had been an easy toddler. And I said, oh yeah, she was wonderful. How about as a teenager? Was she easy as a teenager? Oh yeah, she was great. Okay, well, all children have their temper tantrums. Your daughter just waited till she was 43. And I think that's very real. And I also think, and I'll be doing one of the next presentations along with Cynthia on intergenerational trauma, that those traumas that my ancestors had for centuries, actually, I carried forward unknowingly. And so some of it isn't you as an adopted parent. Some of it is what the child takes with them. And, some of it is the trauma that you carry from not having had your own biological child. And I would just ask that you recognize that, it's not that we were lucky, it's that you were lucky to have us. And it's nice to think about it that way once in a while. I think most of you do, but it's a nice way to think about it. And I think it helps the relationship. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox.
Oh, no, thank you for contributing that too, because you just reminded me of something. And I love that, saying that your daughter was 43 before she had a tantrum. Because, that's another thing. We expect things to happen in a certain sequence. Maybe they don't, and also when it comes to kids, like right now, if they're in your house still, if, you're still raising them, it's okay to ask them. Now, this was the biggest revelation for me as a parent, because like you said, Sandy, it's like, what do you take? The models that you were given, you try to extrapolate from the good parts that you saw, and then maybe, the grace of just living will help you with the rest. Okay, so with that said, you can maybe go ahead and ask them, talk to them. There is truth in kids, like they can be on, like if you allow them, again, it's about creating the atmosphere. Like, even if you think, just say to them, this is right now, this is non-punitive, non-judgmental space. I want to be able to talk with you about, and then fill in the blank about whatever that is, what challenge it is. I just want to know, like, let's give an example, taking out the trash kind of thing, right? How they have chores. You want them to take the trash out, but then they don't take the trash out when you want them to take it out. So then it becomes, look, I thought I told this kid every week, it's the same. They already know Wednesday is the day for trash day. Why don't they take it out? And then what if you ask them, look, here's my expectation to take the trash out for Wednesday. But I see that you don't do that. Now, again, it's about respecting them too, like respecting them as another human being at the very least, no matter how mad you might be about this thing. That's also, if you are able to respect your child and speak to them as you would want to be spoken to as another human being, this is the challenge. What I would like you to take out the trash. What will be helpful for you to do that so that, you know, can we work, what would be better? And then this could be where the conversation begins and the solution begins. So if the child, forgive me for the gendering part because not, but anyway, if you allow them, kids can take the lead and they can give you insight into them. And then that way they'll help you. So that's just an example where you say, oh, well, I'm afraid to go out. The lights aren't on when I take the garbage out. You wanted to go out at night. I'm afraid of the dark. I'm just saying, maybe that's it. So maybe they might do it if it's right after school or something. And then you agree, okay, let's do that. Let's do it after school. That's as long as it gets out, that's great. Boom. So I'm saying that as an example to where you are able to get together and work on a challenge, and that you can allow the child to take the lead without you not being the adult. It's not a disrespect if you ask your child. You still are the adult. You still can be respected as the adult if that's the issue, right? But then a bonus happens. That child has the opportunity then to practice the skills of becoming the adult that you want them to be by problem solving. So that's where you are. That's where you guys are so valuable. And thank you so much for what you do in terms of taking care. It's not easy. It wouldn't be easy no matter how you become a parent. And even for those who are not yet, like you're standing in the gap of someone to be their parent, their guardian, their mentor, that those things, the positive things that you can bring to help them to become a better adult down the road in any way matter so much. So I know we have a few more minutes here, maybe just 2 minutes, right, John, or right? Oh, Lara, is that how you say that?
Hello. I wanted to first say thank you. This is the second time that I've taken a workshop with you during this conference. And I have so many things have made me like open up or connect. I'm one of those kids, well, I'm old enough that, back then they didn't do papers, court, there wasn't no anything. You just gave kids away, to whoever. And I was given away. So I went through my teens with a lot of anger. I came up, I did get reunited with my bio mother, but it wasn't a good look for a long time. But I had always thought I worked these things out and I was good, and I've been doing good. But I get in this conference and I find a lot of things like, yeah. And so I think we learn to live with it. We never get actually over it. You learn to live with it. But I do find that it makes me more understanding and more sensitive to the children that I'm a resource parent for. I have more empathy for them, and I'm always looking at ways to help them work to make it good for them. And to always be that one that fights and knocks down those walls for them. I can't begin to find words to express how warm it's been to just be in conference with you. I want to tell you to continue the awesome work you do. And it has been a pleasure to have been in this section with you.
Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much for saying that and for being the parent that you are. I'm going to take a deep breath now, and everybody could do this with me too.
Yes.
If I could do a tree pose, or some other type of, I would do that right now too. Because anybody got like a cat or a dog or some type of pet they can show show in the screen. I mean, this would be the time to do it.
There's Pumpkin when we need him. My cat's usually on my lap.
Yeah. So really, thank you very much, everybody. Look forward to the next workshop.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Lyra. Oh my God, and there's pearls too.
Oh.
Oh, and I'm sorry, there's a page 2 of people. Okay. Nope, we're good. I see everybody now. We're good. Oh, wait. What? Oh, thank you. Janice, thank you so much. It's a bonus. I love children too. I love seeing children and pets. Oh, Pat.
Hey, Bob. How you doing?
It's great. Thank you so much. It's the little things.